Hello, and welcome to Black Marriage Therapy, BMT. Here we become students of marriage in order to create healthy, long lasting relationships. I'm your host, Junior Smith. In today's episode, we discuss how to heal men's trauma. If you've been enjoying the content, please follow us on Instagram at Black Marriage Therapy. Rate us on your podcast platform and share your favorite episode with a friend. We also have a unique opportunity for you to support this podcast monthly. All you have to do is go to our show notes and click the link to support this podcast. For as little as 99 cents per month, you can partner with us to continue to provide you with high quality content. All right, guys, thank you for joining us on this special podcast episode. We have a special guest here. And before I introduce him and bring him in, I do want to paint a picture for you guys, give you guys a little bit of context. We're talking about Black men's health in America. We're talking about healing their trauma specifically. So I wanted to paint a picture of the state of Black men's trauma in America using some of these statistics, okay? All right, number one, nearly 80% of Black men have experienced at least one traumatic event in childhood, such as community violence or discrimination or abuse, contributing to long-term mental health issues. I know I've already experienced two of those four things there. Number two, studies show that Black boys are often discouraged from expressing a wide range of emotions, leading to restricted emotional vocabulary and difficulty articulating their feelings in adulthood. Number three, Black men are more likely to experience social isolation and loneliness, with over 40% reporting having no close friend to confide in, which exacerbate feelings of alienation and despair. Number four, only 1 in 4 Black men with mental health issues will receive appropriate treatment, if at all, leaving 3/4 of men struggling without any support. And the last one, most shocking, the life expectancy of Black men is shortened by an average of 15 years due to untreated mental health disorders and the physical health consequences of chronic stress in America. 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I found a whole bunch of other stats, but these were the ones that spoke to me the most.
Right.
And I wanted to open with that, highlighting that to show you this is where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like we have a problem. We have a Black men mental health America trauma problem.
Yes, that's well put because it's a combination of all of that together where we find ourselves now.
Yes. So, those of you guys listening, I'll be working together with Dr. Jared Kiddoe to try to present a solution in dealing with, the pressure that we have here in healing Black men's trauma, right? So we don't have to continue the bad coping mechanisms. We don't have to continue with aggression or avoidance or self-isolation, right? We can learn a better path. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with this episode. Jared, can you introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Sure. So my name is Jared Kiddoe. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist by training. And so that's what I've been doing for the past like 15, 16 years. And I'm also the co-founder of Authentic Marriages, which is a coaching foundation for folks, especially in the Black community, who are struggling in their marriages. We do retreats, we do workshops, we do coaching groups. And so we've been in existence for about 4 years now. And we're just really excited about the work that we've been doing there. And one of the things I like to do, especially in that area, is just talking with Black men, Black men who are married, and how their lives, their trauma, those things have affected who they are in their marriage, because it shows up in so many different ways. And it's just really one of my greatest pleasures just to be able to work with Black men as they work through their traumas in their marriage.
Wow. Okay. All right. Good. So I'm talking to the right person here. So, first question for you. Let's go ahead and set a baseline, right? And get a working definition, if you can provide us, for trauma, mental health. What is it? What do these things mean?
Right. So trauma is any, adverse event that has happened in your life that has caused lasting damage, right? So that could be something as big as
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
seeing somebody killed in front of you, or something as small as not having affirming language by your parents. So your parents weren't positive with you, or didn't give you compliments, those kinds of things. If there was a lot of those things, that could be a trauma as well. So any adverse effect that happened to you at any point in your life that has had lasting emotional, psychological effects, that's what we would consider to be trauma.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And so the statistics I was reading, I started to pick up on a pattern that Black men have a hard time addressing their traumas. Do you know why is it so hard for us as Black men to address our trauma and go through those things that had an adverse effect on us?
Yeah. So, I mean, within the Black community for men, and it's not just for the Black community, because we also see this in also Hispanic communities as well, to some degree, where there's a high level of trauma. Also, a lot of men end up suppressing emotions, right? So, if you've been through difficult situations that really are just dysregulating you, the easiest way to deal with that in the very moment, and probably the healthiest thing to do in that very moment when you've been exposed to trauma, is to kind of suppress the negative emotions that are coming up. So feelings of sadness, feelings of shame, those kinds of things that can come up in traumatic situations, you suppress those emotions, and that's not a bad thing. The problem is when you keep suppressing it and you don't actually deal with it in the months, years to come, you're still suppressing it. That's the only tool that you have. And that's what I see with a lot of men is that a lot of men, especially good guys. So we talk about good guys here, where it's like, oh, this is a stable person, they're doing well in their careers and they seem like a good person and their relationships are good or seemingly so. And you say, okay, what are they coming with? Because they seem fine.
Yeah.
A lot of times their wives will describe them as very even keeled and they have everything together and they don't get upset easily, and it's like that's what attracted them to them in the first place, because they're yin to their yang kind of a thing. A part of that yin is the fact that they have been suppressing so much for so long that they are suppressing difficult emotions.
But if it's bringing me a measure of success to suppress,
Mm-hmm.
why not continue to suppress?
Right. Yeah. Why not? Because it works, right? To some
It
degree.
works.
Especially when you think about the fact that in our community and in the communities at large, Black men and anger are not good combinations.
Mm,
Anger can get you killed. Anger can get you unemployed as a Black man,
yes.
right? Because it's like the scariest thing in America, supposedly, is a Black man who's angry, right? And so it's like, well, it's a good thing to be able to suppress your emotions. And it's like, yeah, like the skill of suppressing emotion is good. The skill isn't the problem. The problem is that if that's the only skill you have.
Oh,
Right? Right. So it's like a surgeon that comes in to surgery and all they have is hammers, right? Like, hey, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, there's certain kinds of hammers you're going to use for bones and stuff like that. But if you need to cut somebody's chest open, you need a
yes.
scalpel. And if you start to use a hammer, you're going to kill this person, right? And
Yes.
so it's the same thing for us as men. Like, if we don't have other skills to be able to access our emotions, process our emotions, be able to interact with our emotions in such a way that leaves us open to being affected by our spouse and to interact with their emotion. You need your ability to sit with difficult emotions is the best thing you can do for your spouse a lot of the times. And if you don't know how to deal with it in yourself, then no, you're not going to be able to deal with it in your spouse,
Yeah.
and you're triggering your shame. And it's like, I don't want to feel this. Stop crying, because no matter what I do, it's not good enough. You're always upset about something. So like there's like this whole world of negative repercussions that come from suppressing our emotions in situations where that is not what's called for.
Yeah, I agree, because for me, when I learned to stop suppressing my emotions, I uncovered a messy, unpredictable part of myself that a lot of other men don't really appreciate for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm living a whole life now as a whole human being, as a whole person,
Right, right,
like
right.
100% me. And this side of life is much, much better than
Yes.
living the other side of life. If I'm trying to convince a man right
Mm-hmm.
now to stop suppressing his emotions, this is what I would say.
Yes.
When you suppress the negative emotions, you suppress the positive emotions as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yes, you're not going to get angry as much, but you won't get happy and joy as much either.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you won't be having the feelings of sorrow, or but you can't have feelings of glad either.
Yes.
You
Yes.
block all of it
Turn on the volume on the whole system.
on the whole thing, and life is much better in
Mhm.
color, much
Yeah.
much better, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to mute everything
Mhm.
down. And I have to admit, learning this was a process. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the process now. And the first
Sure.
step to process was processing the trauma that I went through. Just a brief explanation for the listeners. I grew up in an abusive household, and my father was a drunk, and his father was a drunk, as he told me that his father never bought him a pair of shoes in Jamaica. And so he would always tell us we have it so much better because he buys us shoes and stuff like that. But he was a drunk, and we ran away from home at 13. And we were able to come back a year later after couch surfing, and we kicked him out. And our relationship from there has been strained until he passed away. I think 2020, he passed
Oh,
away.
wow.
Yeah, he passed away pretty recently, and that left me
Wow.
with a lot of trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say specifically the event with him, the abuse ended at 13 when we ran away, but the residual impact I've been dealing with even to this day.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you can take me as a case example, help me if I'm making the decision to do something about my past, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
willing to open up and speak about it. What is the process to process that trauma and do something about that?
Well, let me just first say thank you for your openness and vulnerability, because I think one of the biggest things that we need is more Black men being vulnerable about what has happened to them, because I think that is actually part of the solution. For any man to deal with those things, the first things we have to do is start taking those masks off, because we put masks on to survive. So we put a face on to the world, to the world, to show that we're okay, that we're fine, that we're reliable. But we never learn how to take those masks off. And if we don't, we can't deal with our trauma. So processing our trauma requires us to recognize that, listen, I am not my mask. I am not this image I'm projecting. Like, who am I really? Who am I when I'm at home? Who am I when I'm in my intimate relationships? Removing all of the things that protect us, because our masks do protect us, but they also distance us from our significant others.
Yeah, my mask gives me something to do. It gives me a role to play. It always provides
Yes.
me with the answer. So I always felt weak with my father. So I always project strength. So I already know in any situation, I'm first. Let me be
Yeah.
first. I'm running to danger. Like I really just put on a persona, a fierce
Yeah.
persona. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
live from that fierce persona only, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a part of myself that I lived from that fierce persona. And it was so easy to do that because I just knew, just one track mind, be strong, be first,
Right.
no fear, confidence, know all the answers. And and that's why it was so good to have that mask on. But like you
Exactly.
said, after thinking about who am I really didn't know. And that's
Mm.
why it was super difficult for me at first when I recognized these emotions to actually do something about them. But it was my wife, in fact, who was telling me to take a deeper
Mm-hmm.
look, right? To pull on the string a little bit more to see what unravels and see what comes out. And I didn't like what was coming out because it was difficult. It was hard to go back to those moments that I had suppressed. But interestingly enough, I
Mm.
have to go back to those challenging moments in order to be able to make my future better and in order to understand it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Of course.
Finally addressing
Mm-hmm.
the thing we're suppressing.
Yeah. 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 So, one of the things, going back is maybe the scariest and most difficult thing somebody will ever do in their life. And that's one of the reasons why we don't do it. Because like emotions are messy,
Mm.
right? Like especially difficult emotions, they're really messy. They One of the things us as men we want is control. And when you're dealing with difficult emotions, especially initially, it can flood you. It can make you not like yourself. It'll make you feel out of control, right? And that's like the worst possible feeling to have. So it's like really scary. I see it with so many guys I speak to, is like you start to process some of this stuff and the scary stuff starts to come up for them and they'll acknowledge it, but then they'll shut down right as soon as some of those difficult emotions start to come up. They start to intellectualize them and start talking about them like, yes, I feel sad, but you don't see any sadness in their face. Yes, I feel shame, but you don't see any shame on their face, right? Like they're intellectualizing, they're suppressing it, even though they're talking about it, right?
Wow.
And it is so hard because processing difficult emotions, it's not a straight line. It's not like a plan where it's like, hey, all right, dude, we're gonna do this for 30 days. And by the end of day 30, you're gonna be cool. Everything's gonna be cool to say, okay, I can be out of control for 30 days. Like, no, like when you start to process this stuff, this can take a long time. And there's no roadmap to say, hey, this is where it's going to end, except that we know it's going to get better, but you have to stick with it. And so processing really means that you have to go back to your childhood, right? Go back to previous relationships, right? And go beyond this big T, even the big T traumas too. You have to go to the small T traumas, right? Where it's not just, hey, my dad was this person, or I had this really bad, abusive situation going on, which is what you need to address. But there's also like, hey, and this is not even specific to your case, like just in general, like let's say, hey, dad was abusive, right? But mom stayed with him the whole time.
Mm.
So now you got two traumas on both sides there that you have to now go back to and really sit with and think. Now, as an adult, you have to think to yourself, man, it was more nuanced than that. Like my dad was not great, but he also had this background that caused him to not be great. My mom, yes, she didn't do this to me, but at the same time, she didn't really protect me.
Mm.
And so now I have to change my view of the person who I thought was the hero of my life to be like, man, my mom was a little bit more complicated because she stuck around. And she may not have had a choice,
Yeah.
but she stuck around and that did damage to me as well. So now I have to break down these archetypes I have in my head of who was good guys and bad guys in my life growing up to realize they were just all people.
Mm.
And being able to find a way to be okay with that.
Okay. Okay. So as an adult, going back to those places that we couldn't really see the vantage point being so young, right? Specifically
Yeah,
my example, right?
right, right.
The things you're asking me to do, I understand them now because I'm an adult. But as a child, 8, 6, 5, I couldn't understand any of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why you said suppression helped me survive until I got to a place where I know enough, right? And I'm stable enough, as a matter of fact,
Yes, yes, yeah.
stable enough where I can then go look at the wound, right? Almost like a physical wound. If somebody's in a battlefield and they're, bullets flying everywhere and they feel a pain in their leg, they can't look at it right now. They
Yes.
probably gauze it up, wrap it up. They move someplace
Keep it
stable,
moving.
keep it
Yep.
moving. But then you have to go back and assess the damage. You just have to.
You
You
have
can't
to.
just keep limping and never look at it,
Exactly.
right? With a pool of blood trailing behind you. So it sounds like you're saying, as an adult, going back to those places, those challenging times, and taking a look and unpacking all of that now with my adult eyes, like, okay, how do I feel about my dad? How do I feel about my mom? And so this is the state of processing. Is that processing?
Yeah, that's part of the processing, right? That's part of like you are going back and kind of like re-looking at the situation. It's like you're going back to the crime scene
Okay.
and you're looking at different vantage points to really understand what really happened to you. And then also to understand how it shaped you into the person you are today.
So I'm looking, oh my goodness, this is good stuff. So I'm looking at the crime scene to understand now with my adult eyes, so I can see things I couldn't understand before, right? I see things differently. So boom, I'm doing that to understand what really happened, what really took place, right? Because like you
Especially
said,
and it's not even like a reality thing where it's like, oh, these are the facts, but like from an emotional standpoint, what happened? Because that's more
okay,
important than what the specific facts of the situation are.
Okay, I see. So from an emotional standpoint, address what happened, but then you said something even more specific and how it's affecting me now.
Yes. So that's the thing. So like, going to like hip hop culture, like, there's been mass traumas within the Black community that helped to birth. And this is not unique to hip hop in the sense that there are other forms of music like this, but especially in America, hip hop was birthed partially out of the traumas that were being done in these neighborhoods. And so when you think about that, like, okay, people will say, listen, I became this successful artist or whatever because of what I went through. I went through these tough things, so it made me really tough. It made me really strong. I can face anything. Like, if I could deal with that, then you can't do anything to me now. And it's like, yeah, like adversity, like, yeah, like when you deal with that stuff, it really makes things easier going forward. But what people don't understand is that the way trauma works is that whatever gifts trauma may supposedly give you, it always takes far more from you than it gives to you, right? So
what does it take?
So it takes, I mean, at a basic level, it takes your humanity, right? It takes your humanity away because
it takes your emotions.
Yes, exactly. Because your emotions are stolen from you. So I speak to so many men who's like, listen, I'm just not a super emotional person. And my wife is emotional and whatever, but I'm not so emotional. And most dudes aren't emotional, whatever. It's like, okay, I hear you, but I'm just going to call you out on that right now. Like, that ain't true. Like, you may not be like your wife, and no one should ask you to be like your wife. But you are an emotional person. How do I know that? Because you were made in the image of God. And God was created us all with the ability to feel emotions and to feel all sorts of emotions at a very deep level. The problem is that there's been mass programming in our culture, right, that has forced us to strip away parts of ourselves so that most men look at each other as like, yeah, I don't feel a lot of emotions. That must be what it means to be a man, is not to feel a lot of emotions, right? And no, that's not what it is. What it is that you've experienced mass trauma throughout the community. And most of us, to survive those situations, have learned to become dehumanized to survive. And so being dehumanized now becomes the normal.
So we're just all of us are just jacked up. So we're just all, there's so much trauma going around.
Right.
There's so much trauma going around.
Right.
As you look to your left, and your friend on the left is stoic, doing the same thing you do. You look to the right, and they're doing the same thing. And you're thinking, oh, this is manhood because everyone's doing it. But behind the scenes, everyone just has trauma and no one is processing it.
Right, exactly. Because our access to one, not even just treatment, but knowledge. Like, what is our community knowledge levels like when it comes to trauma? Like, really understanding like all the ways in which it shows up. It's better now than it was 20 years ago, but even now it's not great. And so you don't understand the things that are shaping you. So if you don't understand the things that are shaping you, then you don't realize these things are shaping you. So this just seems normal.
Oh. Thank you for explaining that to me. Okay. Going back, part of the step of processing trauma is going back and with the adult eyes, looking at the situation again. Like I said, an example with the person shot with the bullet, going back and looking at the wound now. You have to address it. You can no longer ignore it. Okay.
Right.
You're hemorrhaging blood everywhere.
Right.
You're bleeding on people.
Right. Yes. You're bleeding
on people, man.
Right.
And they're saying, what's wrong with you? And you're like,
right.
I don't know. Yeah. So go back and look at it. And then also take a look at how it's affecting you now. Because I've always heard that trauma, it gets its hooks in you because it goes past the event. The event is done.
Yes.
But they spoke to me about trauma in this scientific way. Okay. To adapt, to survive, like you said. Whereas okay, your mind reminds you of the traumatic event to keep you safe in the future. But what happens is sometimes you are safe in the future, but your mind is still firing. Hey, and any little thing that reminds you of that trauma you experienced that you haven't addressed yet, by the way, that you're pretending isn't real, any little thing that reminds you of that, your brain is telling you, get out of there. It's dangerous, right? And so now you're living this kind of life. You think you're living your full life. You're in the present, right? You think you're in the present, but in reality, you're being puppeted by your past.
Yes.
Because anything that's reminding you of that trauma that you haven't addressed it's causing you to go left, right, left, up, down.
Mhm.
You're avoiding vulnerability. So you're talking to the woman. You love her,
Yes,
but at the
yes.
same time, for some reason, your mind's saying, "Hey, danger, 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 vulnerability,
Hmm.
vulnerability." You don't know why. You don't know what it's connected to. Now you
Hmm.
can't be vulnerable with her.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Living a
Exactly.
life void of vulnerability, not just to the woman, but to everybody, to your friends.
Hmm.
Subject get too deep, and you just peace out,
Yeah, this is too much.
thinking that it's a choice, but it's reality. It's a
Hmm.
defense mechanism from your
Yeah,
body to keep you
automatic.
safe, automatic. Hey,
Hmm.
this reminds us of that thing. And even
Yes,
though you want to pretend like it didn't happen, I'm gonna keep you safe. And what happens
yes.
is we have these things keeping us in a
Hmm.
constant state of stress, chronic stress,
Hmm.
paranoia,
Yes, yes.
constant. And then, and that's why I agree with you. Dealing with it, addressing it, looking at it with not logical, sorry, looking at it now with help can help us address it, and
Yes.
then even come to a place of safety in our present where we're like, hey, yeah, that happened, but I don't have to jump to 10 every time.
I know exactly, exactly,
I don't have to live
exactly.
this way, all discombobulated and fearful
Hmm.
of things,
Hmm.
maybe like the last time, because then you can't live a true life. I don't think you can enjoy life like that.
No, no, no. There's no way to do it, right? So, like, I think like one of the things we run into, for example, working with couples, my wife and I, a lot of times, like with men, for example, what we'll see is men will oftentimes say, "Hey, what I really need from my wife is like men will say, I don't need a lot from my wife.
Yeah,
I need about two or three things, right?
that's
Like
it.
I don't need all of this stuff she be doing. Like sex is usually one of the top ones,
That's
right?
it. That's
Yeah,
it.
I just need that sex, and respect, right? I want to feel like I'm respected by my wife, right? And there's nothing wrong with one of those things, right? Those are, I think everybody wants that. But it's very interesting how men, I'll talk to men and they'll say how they don't feel respected by their wife, right? And yeah, there's some times where it's like, yeah, man, that was just not cool what you did. Like, you probably did say something like really hurtful to him that was disrespectful. But a lot of times I also see situations where, the wife will say something like, she comes in the house and she's like, you know, please pick up your shoes. It's really annoying when I come in the house and the shoes are like, strewn about, right? And the man will kind of feel a kind of a way. It was like, man, like, look, like I came home from 60 hours of work this week and I'm exhausted and, I'm doing all of this stuff. And you just find this one thing to be upset about. Like, you just want to be mad, right? You just want to be mad. And like, then now the man will just like either blow up or, depending on how long he's been holding it in, shut down, right? And you kind of try to find out, like, okay, like, why did that happen? Why do you think you got so upset? It's like, well, I mean, listen, like, I don't think she appreciates what I do. She always finding stuff to be mad about and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, let's talk about this situation. Like, why did you get so upset? And when you really start digging down into it, what you start to find is stuff like shame, right?
Yes.
Because what she is doing is that criticism feels like a criticism of him as a man, right? And you failing as a man in your job, as a man, as a husband, which then makes you feel like if I'm not a good husband, your whole life is about how you're taking care of the people around you. So if you don't feel like a good husband, then what are you? I'm nothing. And what I feel is that you're telling me now
Yeah.
I'm nothing.
Yes.
You are telling me I'm nothing. And
Yes.
I don't want to feel that way. So I'm going to put it back on you. Why you always got an attitude, right? So all of that, and now where did that come from? Where did that wound come from in the first place? It didn't come from your spouse. Usually those wounds come way before, usually in childhood, where it's like, hey, you were trained, which is the form of trauma as well, to be trained to think, hey, listen, your definition of manhood is your ability to provide and your ability to be a good husband. That sounds like a great thing. Like, what's wrong with that? Because it's all performance based. And so if
Yes.
anything makes you question your
Yes.
performance, it's going to shatter you.
Oh, we shouldn't tie those two things together.
Yes.
See, and that's what I'm
Yes.
glad you explained it, because you take two good things, they're supposed to stay separate, but you tie them together. That's the
Yep.
problem you have,
Yes.
because
Yes.
now you're making an identity. You can't oh, be a good man and perform and protect and provide. Okay,
Yes.
that's good. I'm supposed to be doing that. but then you tie it to my identity, then if any of those things, if I can't provide because I lose my job, because
Yes. Life be life, and you be
life
out
be
of a
life.
job in a second. Mm-hmm.
I'm out of a job, but then I'm also out of an identity.
Yes.
and what
Yes.
and what happens is a lot of men spiral. A lot of men spiral.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of men spiral. We find security in that good relationship with the wife or that good job we have. We don't
Yes.
have to go look at the past trauma, the bleeding, the hemorrhaging. We don't have to look at it because we have these things in front of us to take care
Yes.
of. And it
Mm-hmm.
works until it doesn't, until something
Awesome.
comes and reminds us, taps us on the shoulder and say, hey, you haven't processed this.
Yes.
Good. Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit more about processing things then. One thing I want to talk about is processing things with family members because I was
Mm,
blessed to process it with my wife.
right.
Okay. How can men navigate the challenges of discussing their trauma with loved ones? Okay. Or how can they seek, like, tell us how to do it carefully too, right?
Right.
Seek support from friends and family.
Ooh wee. All right. So that is a double-edged sword because one of the things I would say is that healing in community is such a beautiful thing and it's such a powerful thing. Like, and that's one of the things like with our coaching groups that we do, like one of the reasons we do it in groups is because a lot of people are like, no, we just want to work with you like one-on-one as a couple. And it's like, all right, cool. Here's the thing, you're missing out on the community aspect, meaning that when you are able to heal in the presence of other people, it takes the healing to another level.
Oh.
It like there is this, and it accelerates healing as well because you're able to see pain in each other in other people.
Okay.
So it's extremely powerful to be able to work through difficult things in a community. Like I don't think God made us to heal individually.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me.
Right. And then it kind of like, yeah, but that's my private business and all that. It's like, yes, I get what you're saying. And you can't trust everybody. I get what you're saying. But you have to be able to start trusting somebody. Right. And a part of the healing process is having your healing being witnessed, having your pain being witnessed by other people. On a biological level, that's a part of what love is being able to find healing within the relationship of somebody else, where that person is looking at you and seeing you and empathizing with you and seeing your pain. Like that is a part of being in a healthy relationship, right? And so it is important, I think, to be able to then process traumas and talk about traumas with people you care about, especially a significant other, because and that's the thing that we talk about a lot is that this idea, like, listen, when things are going wrong and there's a lot of like emotional discomfort that's going on, it's like not pleasant, but it's a powerful opportunity for deep connection
Mm.
because when your pain is like that deepest part of yourself, is that deepest part of yourself that you show to no one. And when you give your spouse the privilege of witnessing your pain and witnessing your healing, it connects you on a level that you can't even, it is light years ahead of even autobiographical stuff where it's like, yeah, well, this happened to me when I was this age, and this happened to me when I was this age. Like, yeah, they know the information, but when you start to emotionally process it with them, that's light years ahead
Oh
in
my
terms
God.
of connection. No.
That's a hack. That's a hack.
Yes, that's
That's
hack.
a hack because
Hack.
you said biologically you have to speak it, right? Which is something
Yes.
that men, have a challenge with speaking, witnessing it, having somebody bear
Mhm.
witness to what happened to you. At the
Right.
same time, the person bearing witness to you is the person you love. It's the ones closest to you. So they're the
Yes.
best people. I can't think of anybody else better to bear
Mhm.
witness than the people
Mhm.
who are your loved ones in your life. So you're
Yes.
getting a double benefit. And I think that's why it accelerates healing so much because, like you said, you read a book, oh, yeah, that happened to them too. But they're light years away from you. Me
Yes.
and Dwayne Rock Johnson may have similar stories, but he's the Rock. I'll never talk to him in my
Right.
life.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but having somebody who loves me, who I know cares for me, who I know I can trust,
Yes.
witness my pain,
And
right?
not turn away from your pain.
Not turn away, validate me,
Just
say, "Oh, you
validate your
did
pain
something."
and not look down on you because of your pain.
Oh yeah, that's gonna accelerate growth. Quick, quick.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
gonna be encouraged to come back and
Yes.
express some
Yes.
more stuff I didn't share the
Yes.
first time.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. So okay. So now we're in the headspace of a man who wants to do that.
Right.
right, share with his wife or his child? How do we prepare the wife? How do we prepare the loved one? Because that's got to be difficult on their end.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be really honest.
Yes.
I think, especially when it comes to trauma, when we're trying to share trauma, I think you have to do the work of obviously understanding your trauma. And I think that's best done with a professional, right?
Okay. Yes.
So like you go to a therapist and that like, unfortunately, the idea of, you're a Black man going to a therapist, it's changing now, thankfully. But for a long time, it has been like, well, dude, what are you doing? Right? Like, why would you need to do that? Right? And it's like, because I want to live, right? Because I want to live. That's why.
Live for real.
I want to live for real. I don't want to live this fake life. I mean, what's the point of a fake life? You're going to die in 70 years anyway. What's the point of that, right? So working with a professional to process your trauma, right? And then once you start to do some of that work to say, hey, listen, like, I want to be able to talk about this with my wife.
Okay.
And so they will kind of easily walk with you to be like, hey, listen, let's talk about how that conversation will go, or let's do a joint session one of these times.
Okay.
Where you can just talk to your wife about it, right? And I'm telling you, that's going to be one of the most connecting experiences you'll have, especially if you prep for it properly. Because there's a downside where you have to be careful, right? Like if you rush into telling somebody difficult things about yourself, where you haven't prepared yourself, they haven't been prepared to kind of hear it. Sometimes we react to stuff in ways where, and it's not because we're terrible people, it's just that hearing difficult things triggers our own stuff.
Yes.
And so it may be hard to hear that your loved one saying that, hey, like this happened to me when I was this age, right? And like, man, like I didn't realize it was that deep with you. And your reaction may not be the best in that moment because you haven't been prepped properly about it, right? And it's not to say that's an irrevocable situation where you can't fix that. It's just that it makes it harder to be
I understand.
again, But usually I say, listen, if you're trying to process trauma with your significant other, you want to make sure you're professionally processing your trauma.
Got it. I agree. You want to do the work first.
Yes.
I like the fact that you said you want to have an understanding of it first.
Yes.
You want to have an understanding of it first, right? And have a grounded understanding and be stable. Be stable where you've already gone through the crime scene and you're looking at these things and you've gone through these different pieces. And now you're taking your spouse through and you can present to them this and that and this and that, right? Where you're giving them the tour of it rather than you're doing it with your spouse, which can be messy and dangerous.
Right. And exactly. And not even to say that you can't ever like share like, hey, I'm doing this work in therapy and I'm kind of finding out more things about yourself. But you just really have to be careful about how you do it.
Okay.
Because sometimes, because I think, it's not to say like you have to clean yourself up and be like, okay, I'm fine now. Now I can tell you everything. Like a part of it sometimes is just really just telling you, walking along inside each other, telling each other stuff. But I think sometimes we need to get to realizations to really craft the words. Like we need to realize what happened to us really to be able to craft the words necessary to explain it to our spouse.
I like that. Okay, well, in that vein, last question to you is how can men recognize when they need professional help to address their trauma? And then speak more about the added benefits for seeking therapy or counseling.
Right. No, so that's a great question because I think, it can be hard because so many things have been normalized, right? What I will say is this. A great way to know, like, okay, whether I need to talk to somebody about what's going on in my life is to talk with your wife. And I tell this to guys who've been married for like 5-10 years or more. Like, hey, when you talk to your wife, like, ask your wife, does she feel like she really knows you? Right? Just ask her that. And you'll be surprised how many wives will be like, I think I know you're a good man. I think I know you're a good husband. I think I know you.
10 years?
Yes. But like to really know you, I don't know if I really know you. I don't feel like you open yourself up to me. right? A lot of wives would say that. Like, I just don't feel like I know you like that. I think you know more about me as a wife than I know about you as a husband in terms of who you are inside. I feel like you cover a lot of those things up, right? And that to me is a red flag. That's a red flag. It's like, hey, listen, whenever you're covering stuff up, we're talking about trauma. We're talking about trauma. And it's not necessarily big T trauma. You may be like, well, no one abused me and I didn't see anybody get killed and blah, blah. Like, okay, yeah, okay. The big T trauma is off the table. Okay. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of small T traumas. Where it's not the stuff where you stereotypically think about it, but it's left a scar in your heart that is now something you have to protect. And when you protect something, you can't be vulnerable with it, which means that your spouse is not going to see. So that's a good way. Other people can oftentimes tell you, because oftentimes our ability to see ourselves is very diminished.
Yeah.
So it may not be your wife, it may be like a good
I
friend
love
or
that.
some other close friend who'll be able to like, yeah, like I don't feel like I feel like I know you as a good person, but I don't know if I know you know you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I like that. Okay. Well, now you just gave me another question. um, what advice do you have for those men who feel ashamed and who are reluctant because they speak to their wife and the wife says, "Yeah, I don't know you," and he's like, "Oh man,
Yes, that hurt. That hurt.
yikes, 10 years,
Right.
right?" And they think in their head, "Yeah, I do know a lot about my wife. I know all this stuff that she talks to me about, but." I do suppress a lot of this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
now they're listening, finding out that's trauma. It's
Right.
new, it's a revelation
Right.
to them.
Right.
And immediately feel shame.
Yes,
Immediately,
exactly.
yeah, they're not open to it. They're not happy about it.
No, it's like, oh no. No, I want to close this down even further, right?
So what advice do you have to those men who feel ashamed about it, who are reluctant about it?
Well, look, the thing about trauma is that unfortunately, if you've lived to the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, you've had some kind of trauma in your life. Like trauma is unfortunately a part of the human experience. Now, I think in the Black community, the levels of trauma go real deep. So some communities have more trauma than others, but all communities have trauma. So if you find out that you have something in your life or some things in your life that were maybe traumatic, welcome to the human race,
Mm.
right? Like this is not a man, like what's wrong with me? It's like, no, what's wrong with us? Like the question we need to be asking is, what is wrong with us? Because all of us have stuff in our lives that would be considered to be traumatic,
Yeah.
right? And so, yes, I mean, it doesn't feel good to know that, man, I have this hurt in me, but that is a part of being a human being. Like everybody has it. Every single, and anybody who pretends they don't have it is either lying to themselves or they haven't done the work to realize that it's there. That's it. So it is a human experience, unfortunately. And trauma or your ability to deal with trauma has nothing to do with you being a man. Meaning that I think we want to look at ourselves as like all self-sufficient. So nothing bad could have really happened to me. And if it did, it just made me stronger. Like that's what we think. And the two things have nothing to do with each other. Like manhood is defined by things that has nothing to do with whether or not bad things happen to you or not. Bad things happen to you is a part of the human experience.
Wow. Man, these answers you're giving, amazing. Okay, so let's end with a tip for the man listening who has been convinced now
Yeah.
to do something about the trauma, recognizing that, they feel like they're ready to go back and address some things that they know they've suppressed, or
Mhm.
even sometimes they don't even fully understand what's happening. Because sometimes that happens. You
Yeah.
don't always have a person come in and say, I had the abuse and this is what it stems from. Sometimes people are like, I can't sleep. I can't get
Mhm.
close. And they don't
Mhm.
even know, right? And then they go
Yes.
back.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so give them the first step. Just give them the first step to what to do. And then I will give them a tip. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you've recognized that there's something going on inside of you, I would recommend honestly finding a therapist. Like, no, you may say to yourself, well, it's not that bad. You don't know how bad it is. Like, yeah, like it's like you self-diagnosing yourself. And it's like, well, I've been having these fainting spells for the past year. And I think it's just water. I think I just need to drink more water. So I'm just going to keep drinking water. And your wife is like, I think you need to go to the doctor. It's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I just drink my water, right? Like, I'm going to be good. No, you're not. Like you are not going to be okay, right? Don't like, so whenever we find these things in ourselves, we hope like it's not that big of a deal. And so we try to minimize it to like, okay, I'm going to read a couple books or whatever, which is fine. But that you need to go beyond that because not just your wife, but your children are dependent on you finding out what's going on in your life, right? Because the last thing you want to do is inflict trauma on your own kids because you have unhealed trauma in your life. And that happens all the time by really well-meaning men. They traumatize their own kids because they didn't deal with their own stuff, because they didn't realize the depth of it. So finding a therapist is, I would say, listen, the first thing, and just starting a conversation. And you don't know where it's going to go, but it is worth doing because there are people who are relying on you to take care of your pain so that you can show up for them in theirs.
My one tip for the man who is recognizing that there may be something that he needs to work on in his life and who is thinking about doing something about it, I would say the first place you can start is learning language. That's what really helped me. Learning some language, emotional language. These are things, these are lessons we skipped as men. I got a little bit of it.
What's your lexicon?
Yeah, I got a little bit of it, as a kid in elementary school, grade school, mad, sad, angry, but
that's right.
Learn some language, some emotional language, emotional intelligence. Learn what that looks like. So you can identify. You can start speaking, right? You can start talking to yourself. Learn the language because it's almost like they say the same thing for finances. You want to get rich, you want to learn more about money, learn the finance language, learn what they call this and that and ROI, learn the language, right? You're going to start swimming in it, learn about it now. So go ahead. You're going to be knee deep in it soon, but for right now, go ahead and learn some language. Look it up, Google, and begin your journey that way.
Yeah. And that's I like that because it's a nice little small entryway into it, but the dividends it will pay out is huge because that helps when your wife is like, how are you feeling? Right. And so I'm gonna add this one other thing just to tag team what you just said.
Yes.
So pair with the learning of the languages, mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness, practicing the awareness of how you're doing. And it's not like a Buddha thing where like you gotta sit on a stone and become like Buddha. It's like simple things like, hey, just asking yourself several times a day, like, how am I feeling? How am I feeling in my body? I may not have the words in my head to like know what I'm feeling, but I can know like, okay, I'm feeling tight in my back. I wonder why I'm feeling tight in my back. What happened today that caused that? And then now you start to pair some of these words that you're learning, like you talked about.
I like that.
With the body awareness, because you're paying attention. A lot of times we just keep going, and we use our bodies as a machine instead of being able to be like, no, my body is a part of who I am.
Yes.
And understanding it's sending me messages as well, right?
I like that. We gotta do this again.
Oh yeah,
we are gonna do this again. I got a lot of topics. I want to talk about anger. I want to talk more about those skills we missed as men, social, emotional skills. We could talk. We got a lot to talk about. But
definitely, man.
Oh my goodness,
appreciate
it so much. I want to end with the quote. I want to end with this quote, anonymous quote. Don't know who said this, but it says, "When things are hard, sometimes we put on a mask, and that's not hard. What's hard is finding out. Eventually, the mask is who we really are." And so you get to the point when you find out you remove the mask and there really is no face under there. That's when it's time to start doing some digging.
Yes. Wow. That's amazing. Right. That's a code. Wow.
Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode of Black Marriage Therapy. If you haven't yet followed us on Instagram, you can do so at Black Marriage Therapy. Remember, all the things that we're talking about will be in the show notes below. Thanks again for listening and talk to you soon.